Okay, we'll move on now to mobility services. So again, we mentioned some of these different mobility services that are increasingly taking a foothold in the UK. Any of you give us your perspective, or maybe the ones that you're most excited about, the ones that you could see making real impact in terms of your customer base and your business?
It's probably an easier one for me to start with. Which one I'm excited about? It's flexible car sharing, clearly. I think, as I said at the start, it's an exciting time for the sector, with kind of more players coming to the market, but also more kind of understanding of the benefits of car sharing and kind of moving people from private ownership to using a car as part of a wider mix of transport options.
Yeah, I think you asked the question, are we excited about it, or what? And I have to say I'm not very, and it's not because I see it as a threat or an issue. I absolutely can see where, you know, car sharing in its, say, traditional sense, because it's new technology, but where it works in the areas that you've described, you know, the city and the environment. But it's, you know, its massive challenge is asset utilisation, and therefore it's interesting, it's innovative, it works for, I think, communities where, you know, they're tight knitted. I mean, even at its most basic, it works in a family unit. I can see families having, you know, not 3 cars amongst the kids that, if they're driving and still at home, but maybe 2, and they do more, you know, literally within the family unit, more car sharing. And I can see it working where, you know, people have apartment living and there might be 4 vehicles to share with maybe a dozen apartments, you know, and the vehicles are parked. I can see that working really well, and I can see that being very interesting and attractive to kind of city or near or short travel environments. I think, you know, in the areas where I'm thinking about how can I scale that, how can we scale that as an industry, I think actually it's first, it will almost be a back to the future, because I actually think a number of corporates and a number of individuals will just think more carefully about, they don't need 1,000, in a corporate scenario, they don't need 1,000 vehicles for their drivers, they'll get 800 and they'll rent 200, and they'll use the rental as the form of mobility stroke top up. And I think if rental firms and, you know, using the dealership sites, and I think the whole rental business is a really interesting time for rental firms, because if, you know, that is a really interesting opportunity to join the dots, as we described just earlier, and actually make those vehicles much more available, you know, through some form of, you know, app or equivalent, which I think will draw in corporates who will probably take a lower total fleet and actually be more flexible on the top-ups. And I think that's a very interesting area.
So Bob, do you think your members, the SME, the smaller rental companies, are ready to take advantage of that opportunity?
We've got a number that are already looking at it, Toby, and what it does do, traditionally the independent is open from 8 in the morning to maybe 6 at night, but this modern day technology means that a customer can pick up a car 24 hours a day and book it 24 hours a day, so and return it. So it's quite a game changer for us, but it's the market, it's the world we live in now. We're 24-hour, 7-day a week, 365-day culture, and we need to make it easy and be there for our customers.
I think that's a great point. I mean, you know, it's almost the airport model everywhere. So when we fly to places that we don't know, we often don't think twice about hiring a car for a relatively short distance. Well, why wouldn't we do that everywhere if that service was available? And we'd probably pay quite a bit for it. So it's just, you know, it's interesting. Again, the precedents, I think, are out there. It's a question of us thinking a bit more about 24/7, because convenience is our biggest single challenge with mobility. Someone's got a car parked out in front of their drive or on the street. That's the biggest challenge we've got, and the reason why smartphones and all of the other apps are so useful is they're so convenient. So if we're going to go to a mobility solution, which I'm quite an advocate of, if it can match the convenience of having a car, a relatively cheap car, because cars have probably never been cheaper than they are today, actually sat outside, and the convenience of that, I think we're there.